In the summer of 338 BC, on a wide plain near the town of Chaeronea in central Greece, two armies faced each other in what would become one of history's most consequential battles. On one side stood the combined forces of Athens and Thebes, proud Greek city-states fighting for their independence. On the other, the disciplined ranks of Macedonia, under King Philip II and his teenage son Alexander. The plain of Chaeronea lay at a strategic crossroads in Boeotia, where the roads from Thebes and Athens intersected. This wasn't just another territorial skirmish, it was a battle for the very soul of Greece. The Macedonians, long considered barbarians by the southern Greeks, had steadily expanded their influence southward under Philip's brilliant leadership. The Greek alliance mustered approximately 35,000 men, primarily citizen soldiers from Athens and Thebes. The famous Theban Sacred Band, an elite force of 300 pairs of warriors, stood ready to defend Greek freedom. Their opponents, the Macedonian army of similar size, represented a revolution in military organization. Philip's army featured the sarissa-wielding phalanx, soldiers carrying pikes up to 18 feet long, and heavy cavalry commanded by the young Alexander. The Macedonian army of similar size represented a revolution in military organization. Philip's army featured the sarissa-wielding phalanx, soldiers carrying pikes up to 18 feet long, and heavy cavalry commanded by the young Alexander. As dawn broke, Philip deployed his forces with characteristic cunning. He placed himself on the right wing, facing the Athenians, while his son Alexander, just 18 years old, commanded the left wing against the Thebans. The Macedonian center initially held back, creating a refused center formation. The battle began with Philip ordering his right wing to fall back gradually before the advancing Athenians. This apparent retreat was deliberate, a tactical ploy that had served Philip well in previous engagements. The eager Athenians, sensing victory, pushed forward, creating gaps in their formation as they advanced. Meanwhile, on the left wing, young Alexander noticed a gap opening between the Theban Sacred Band and their allies. Seizing this moment, he led his cavalry in a devastating charge. The future conqueror of Persia demonstrated the tactical brilliance that would later make him legendary, smashing through the Greek lines and throwing their left wing into chaos. The Theban Sacred Band, true to their reputation, stood their ground. These elite warriors, who had never been defeated, formed a defensive circle and fought to the last man. Archaeological evidence from the mass grave, discovered centuries later, confirms their valiant last stand. 254 skeletons laid out in 7 rows, with their weapons and armor still beside them. As the Athenian lines stretched thin in pursuit of Philip's seemingly retreating forces, the Macedonian king sprung his trap. His troops suddenly halted their retreat and counterattacked. The disciplined Macedonian phalanx, with their longer sarissas, now held a crucial advantage over the shorter-speared Greek hoplites. The battle reached its crescendo as Philip's forces drove into the now disordered Athenian ranks. Caught between Philip's veterans and Alexander's cavalry, which had wheeled around after breaking through on the left, the Greek alliance began to crumble. The proud armies of Athens and Thebes, who had once dominated the Greek world, found themselves outmaneuvered and outfought. When the dust settled, more than 1,000 Athenians lay dead, with twice that number captured. The Thebans suffered even heavier losses, including the complete annihilation of the Sacred Band. Philip, showing both pragmatism and mercy, allowed Athens to ransom their prisoners and maintain a degree of autonomy, though under Macedonian hegemony. Today, a magnificent stone lion still guards the mass grave of the Theban Sacred Band at Chaeronea. This silent sentinel serves as a testament to their courage and the profound changes that this battle brought to the ancient world. Beneath its watchful gaze lie the remains of warriors who fought for a vision of Greece that would never return. The Battle of Chaeronea marked the end of an era. The age of the independent Greek city-state was over, replaced by Macedonian dominance. Philip would go on to unite most of Greece under his leadership, laying the groundwork for his son Alexander's extraordinary conquests. The battle demonstrated the superiority of professional armies over citizen militias and the effectiveness of combined arms tactics. Perhaps most importantly, Chaeronea represents a crucial turning point in Western civilization. The victory enabled the spread of Greek culture across the ancient world through Alexander's later conquests, creating the Hellenistic Age. The battle didn't just determine who would rule Greece, it shaped the course of history for centuries to come. As the sun sets over the plain of Chaeronea today, the ancient battlefield appears peaceful. But beneath this tranquil surface lies the story of a pivotal moment when the fate of classical Greece was decided, and a new chapter in human history began. The echoes of that fateful summer day in 338 BC continue to resonate through time, reminding us how single battles can change the course of civilization. As the morning mist rises from the Granicus River, two armies face each other across its rushing waters. On the other, a young king named Alexander surveys the scene, his legendary Companion Cavalry at the ready. The date is May 3034 BC, and history is about to be made. Alexander the Great had crossed the Hellespont just weeks earlier, bringing his Macedonian army into Asia Minor. This was more than just another military campaign. It was the beginning of a dream to conquer the Persian Empire, the largest the world had ever seen. The Persian commanders had chosen their position well. Nearly 20,000 Persian cavalry lined the steep eastern bank of the Granicus, while their Greek mercenary infantry, 20,000 strong, waited on higher ground behind them. They believed the Macedonians would be cut down as they struggled through the river's swift current. But Alexander was no ordinary commander. At just 22 years old, his tactical genius was already apparent. While his generals advised waiting until the next day to attack, Alexander saw opportunity in immediate action.
The Hellespont would blush with shame if we showed fear of a stream after crossing it.
The battle opened with a feint.
Parmenio, take the left and make them think we're crossing here.
Alexander ordered his left wing, under Parmenio's command, to threaten a crossing. As Persian forces shifted to meet this threat, Alexander led his right wing, the elite Companion Cavalry, upstream to a more favorable crossing point. The Macedonian advance was a sight to behold. Wave after wave of cavalry and infantry moved into the rushing waters, maintaining their formation despite the current. Persian arrows and javelins rained down, but the Macedonians pressed forward, their sarissas, long spears, pointing the way. As they reached the eastern bank, chaos erupted. The Persians charged down the slope, meeting the Macedonians while they were still struggling in the water. The fighting was brutal, hand-to-hand combat with spears, swords, and axes. The river began to run red with blood. Thick of battle, Alexander became a primary target. Persian nobles, seeking glory, charged directly at the young king. His distinctive white-plumed helmet and brilliant armor made him easy to spot. Rosaces, a Persian commander, struck Alexander so hard that he shattered his lance on Alexander's breastplate. Drawing his sword, Alexander struck back. But another Persian noble, Spithridates, raised his battle axe behind Alexander. At the crucial moment, Clytus the Black, one of Alexander's most trusted commanders, severed Spithridates' arm with a single sword stroke, saving Alexander's life. This moment would be immortalized in ancient histories and artwork for centuries to come. The Companion Cavalry's charge proved decisive. While the Persians had positioned their cavalry forward, they had no answer for the Macedonian phalanx that followed. The tightly packed infantry, wielding their long sarissas, created an impenetrable wall of spears that pushed forward relentlessly. As the Macedonian cavalry broke through on the right, the Persian line began to crumble. Their cavalry, despite its numerical superiority, couldn't maintain formation against the disciplined Macedonian assault. Soon, the Persian cavalry was in full retreat, leaving their Greek mercenary infantry exposed and alone. The Greek mercenaries fighting for Persian gold found themselves abandoned. Alexander turned his full force against them. These men, seen as traitors to the Greek cause, were shown no mercy. Of the 20,000 mercenaries, all but 2,000 were killed. The survivors were sent back to Macedonia in chains. As the sun set over the Granicus, Alexander stood victorious. The Macedonian losses were light, only about 120 men, while the Persians had lost thousands, including many of their noble cavalry commanders. Alexander honored his fallen enemies, ordering proper burials for the Persian nobles who had died fighting. In a powerful symbolic gesture, Alexander sent 300 suits of Persian armor back to Athens as an offering to Athena. The message was clear. This was just the beginning of his campaign to avenge the Persian invasion of Greece 150 years earlier. The Battle of Granicus was more than just a military victory. It was a statement. Alexander had proven that the Persian Empire, despite its vast resources and wealth, was vulnerable. The Greek cities of Asia Minor began to open their gates to him, and his legend began to grow. As Alexander camped that night on the battlefield, he couldn't have known that this was just the first step in creating one of the largest empires the world had ever seen. The waters of the Granicus had witnessed the rise of a legend, and the world would never be the same. The battle would be studied for centuries to come, teaching lessons about the importance of decisive leadership, the value of combined arms tactics, and the power of seizing the initiative. But perhaps most importantly, it showed that a small, well-led force could triumph over a numerically superior enemy through courage, discipline, and tactical brilliance. The Granicus River still flows today through modern-day Turkey, its waters carrying the echo of that ancient battle, a reminder of the day when a young king named Alexander began his journey to become the Great. The year is 334 BC. The waves of the Aegean Sea crash against the fortified walls of Miletus, one of the greatest Greek cities in Asia Minor. But these aren't peaceful times. Alexander the Great, the young Macedonian king who has already begun to reshape the known world, stands at its gates with his army. Miletus was no ordinary prize. Built on a peninsula with 4 separate harbors, its walls rose impressively from the coastline. The Persian Empire had maintained control of this strategic port city, and its commander, Hegesistratus, had pledged loyalty to Darius III, the Persian king of kings. As Alexander's forces approach, the situation appears grim for the defenders. The Macedonian army, hardened by recent victories, brings with them siege engines and a determination that has already proved unstoppable at Granicus. But Hegesistratus holds one crucial advantage: the promise of Persian naval support. The Persian fleet, nearly 400 warships strong, patrols the waters nearby. They represent Miletus's lifeline, the promise of reinforcement and supplies that could turn this siege into a costly stalemate for Alexander. But Alexander has not come unprepared. His smaller fleet of 160 ships, commanded by Nicanor, has already secured the narrow entrance to the harbor of Lade. It's a brilliant strategic move, effectively cutting off any hope of Persian naval intervention. As the Macedonian army sets up their positions, the defenders of Miletus face a terrible choice. Their walls are strong, but Alexander's siege engines are already being assembled. The Persian fleet, despite its superior numbers, remains frustratingly passive, anchored at nearby Mount Mycale. The first assault comes not from siege engines, but from Alexander's infantry. The Macedonians advance with their famous sarissa pikes, while archers provide covering fire. The defenders respond with a hail of arrows and stones, but the Macedonian troops press forward under the protection of their shields. Meanwhile, in the harbor, Alexander's smaller fleet maintains its crucial blockade. The Persian ships, despite having more than twice the numbers, refuse to engage. This hesitation proves fatal for Miletus's chances, as each passing day strengthens Alexander's position and weakens the defenders' resolve. As the siege intensifies, Alexander's engineers bring forward their massive engines. Towers roll toward the walls, while battering rams pound at the gates. The defenders fight desperately, but they're facing the most advanced siege warfare of their time. The breakthrough comes when Alexander's troops manage to create a breach in the walls. The Macedonian soldiers pour through the gap, while others scale the walls using ladders. The fighting is fierce, street by street, house by house. Many of Miletus's defenders and citizens flee to a small island in one of the harbors, hoping to hold out there. But Alexander, showing his tactical brilliance, anticipates this move. He has already positioned troops in light boats, ready to pursue. As night falls, the reality becomes clear to the remaining defenders. The Persian fleet remains immobile, their promised support nothing more than an empty hope. With Alexander's forces in control of most of the city and no prospect of relief, surrender becomes inevitable. With Alexander's forces in control of most of the city and no prospect of relief, surrender becomes inevitable. Alexander's treatment of Miletus becomes a model for his future conquests. The Greek citizens are spared, though their city now recognizes him as its new ruler. The Persian garrison soldiers are incorporated into his army, a practical solution that would serve him well throughout his campaigns. The Persian fleet, having witnessed the fall of Miletus without intervening, finally withdraws. Their inaction marks a crucial failure in Darius's strategy to halt Alexander's advance. The young Macedonian king now controls another vital port, strengthening his position for the conquest of Asia Minor. In the aftermath, Miletus begins to recover under Alexander's rule. The city's strategic location ensures it remains an important center of trade and culture. Alexander's victory here proves to be another stepping stone in his incredible conquest of the Persian Empire. The siege of Miletus stands as a testament to Alexander's military genius. His combination of naval strategy, siege warfare, and tactical flexibility proved unstoppable. The fall of this great city opened the way for his further advances into the Persian Empire, marking another crucial step in the creation of one of history's largest empires. More than 2 millennia later, the ruins of Miletus still stand as a silent witness to this pivotal moment in history. The siege that lasted mere weeks would have consequences that would reshape the ancient world for centuries to come. The year is 334 BC. The warm waters of the Aegean Sea lap against the shores of Caria, where one of antiquity's most formidable cities stands defiantly against the approaching Macedonian army. This is Halicarnassus, home to the famous mausoleum, and the next target of Alexander the Great's unstoppable eastern campaign. Halicarnassus was no ordinary prize. Its massive walls, engineered by Greek architects, rose like stone titans from the earth. 2 commanding citadels, the Acropolis and Salmacis, stood watch over a deep harbor that could shelter an entire Persian fleet. Within these walls, Memnon of Rhodes, the brilliant Greek mercenary commander serving the Persian Empire, had prepared a defense that would test Alexander's military genius like never before. As Alexander's army approached, Memnon had spared no effort in strengthening the city's defenses. The garrison was reinforced with experienced mercenaries, the walls were fortified, and provisions were stockpiled. More importantly, Memnon had access to the sea, allowing him to receive endless supplies and reinforcements from the Persian fleet. This would not be a simple test of siege engines against stone. It would be a battle of wit, endurance, and innovation. When Alexander's forces arrived in the late summer of 334 BC, They were fresh from victories at Granicus and Miletus. But Halicarnassus would be different. The young king surveyed the formidable defenses before him and knew that this siege would require every tool in his military arsenal. The Macedonians began their preparations methodically. Engineers constructed massive siege towers, some reaching heights of over 150 feet. Workers dug trenches and filled in the defensive ditches around the city. Alexander's famous phalanx units took up positions, their long sarissas glinting in the Mediterranean sun. The initial assault focused on the weakest section of the wall, but Memnon was ready. As Macedonian troops approached with their siege engines, the defenders unleashed a devastating counterattack. Flaming arrows arced through the sky, while catapults launched stones that splintered the wooden siege equipment. The first attack was repulsed with heavy casualties, but Memnon wasn't content to merely defend. Under the cover of darkness, Persian forces launched a devastating sortie. They burst from the gates, carrying torches and weapons, catching the Macedonian siege workers by surprise. The night erupted in chaos as they set fire to siege engines and construction equipment. Alexander himself had to lead a counterattack to drive them back into the city. The siege settled into a rhythm of innovation and counter-innovation. Alexander's engineers developed new approaches, protected artillery positions, reinforced siege towers, and sophisticated mining operations. For every Macedonian advance, Memnon had an answer. The defenders constructed internal walls behind damaged sections, launched counterattacks through underground tunnels, and maintained a constant barrage of missile fire. The Persian fleet's presence added another dimension to the siege. Ships could harass Alexander's forces from the sea, while ensuring a steady stream of supplies reached the defenders. Alexander, lacking a significant naval force, was forced to adapt his strategy, focusing on sections of the city away from the harbor. The breakthrough came after weeks of sustained assault. Alexander's miners had weakened a section of the wall, while his artillery kept the defenders occupied elsewhere. When the wall finally collapsed, Macedonian troops poured through the breach. But instead of finding a vulnerable city, they faced something else entirely. Memnon had anticipated this and constructed a crescent-shaped inner wall, turning the breach into a killing zone. But instead of finding a vulnerable city, they faced something else entirely. Memnon had anticipated this and constructed a crescent-shaped inner wall, turning the breach into a killing zone. Despite this setback, Alexander's relentless pressure began to tell. The defenders were exhausted, and portions of the city had been reduced to rubble. Memnon, recognizing the inevitability of defeat, made a crucial decision. Under cover of darkness, he evacuated the majority of his forces by sea, leaving only a small garrison in the citadels. The remaining Persian defenders made their last stand memorable. Before retreating to the citadels, they set fire to their own military quarter, destroying valuable supplies and creating chaos that slowed the Macedonian advance. The flames spread, consuming significant portions of the lower city. Alexander had won, but at a heavy cost. Alexander had won, but at a heavy cost. The lower city was his, though the citadels would hold out for some time longer. He had learned valuable lessons about siege warfare that would serve him well in future campaigns, particularly at Tyre. But Memnon's brilliant defense had bought the Persian Empire precious time and resources, proving that even Alexander could be made to pay dearly for his conquests. The siege of Halicarnassus marked a turning point in ancient warfare. It demonstrated that even the most formidable walls could fall to determined attackers, while showing how innovative defensive tactics could extract a terrible price from any invader. The scars of this siege would remain visible on Halicarnassus for generations, a testament to the determination of both attacker and defender in this crucial battle of Alexander's campaign. Today, the ruins of Halicarnassus still stand in modern-day Bodrum, Turkey. Though the mighty walls have crumbled and the great harbor has silted up, these stones still tell the story of one of history's most dramatic sieges, a battle that pitted the greatest commander of the ancient world against one of its most brilliant. In the autumn of 333 BC, two of history's mightiest armies converged near a small town called Issus in what is now southern Turkey. On one side stood Alexander the Great, the young Macedonian king who had already conquered much of Greece and Asia Minor. On the other, Darius III, the great king of Persia, commanding the largest empire the world had ever seen. Alexander's army, though smaller, was a well-oiled machine of about 40,000 men. At its core were the famous Macedonian phalangites, wielding their terrifying sarissa pikes that could reach up to 18 feet in length. Supporting them were the hypaspists, elite shield-bearing infantry, and Alexander's Companion Cavalry, perhaps the finest mounted unit in the ancient world. Darius had assembled a massive force of roughly 100,000 men. His army included the elite Persian immortals, skilled archers, and cavalry from across his vast empire. But numbers alone don't win battles, and Darius was about to learn this lesson the hard way. The battlefield itself played a crucial role in this encounter. The coastal plain near Issus was hemmed in by mountains on one side and the Mediterranean Sea on the other, creating a natural bottleneck. This terrain would nullify Darius's numerical advantage, as he couldn't bring his full army to bear at once. Alexander positioned his forces with characteristic brilliance. His heavy infantry formed the center, while he personally led his companion cavalry on the right wing. The left wing, anchored against the mountains, was commanded by Parmenion, one of his most trusted generals. Darius made what would prove to be a fatal mistake. He placed himself in the center of his line, as was Persian custom, rather than on the safer right wing. His best troops, including the Greek mercenaries, were positioned around him, while his less reliable units held the flanks. The battle opened with a clash of cavalry on Alexander's right wing. The Macedonian king led his companions in his signature wedge formation, driving hard toward the Persian left. Meanwhile, the Persian cavalry attempted to outflank Alexander's left wing near the sea, creating a dangerous gap in their center. In the center, the Macedonian phalanx advanced across the Pinarus River, their thousands of sarissa points creating an impenetrable wall of bronze and wood. The Persian infantry launched volleys of arrows, but the well-armored Macedonians pressed forward relentlessly. Then came the moment that would change history. Alexander, spotting Darius in his chariot, led his companion cavalry in a ferocious charge directly toward the Persian king. The strike was like a hammer blow to the Persian center. Elite Persian guards threw themselves in front of their king, but the Macedonian cavalry cut through them like a hot knife through butter. Darius, witnessing the collapse of his left wing and Alexander's unstoppable advance, made a decision that would forever tarnish his reputation. Darius, witnessing the collapse of his left wing and Alexander's unstoppable advance, made a decision that would forever tarnish his reputation. He turned his chariot and fled the battlefield, abandoning his army to its fate. The sight of their king's retreat spread panic through the Persian ranks. The Persian army began to disintegrate. Thousands of soldiers tried to flee through the narrow mountain passes, creating deadly bottlenecks where many were trampled to death. Others were cut down by the pursuing Macedonian cavalry or driven into the sea. The victory was total. Alexander had lost perhaps 500 men, while Persian casualties numbered in the tens of thousands. More importantly, he captured Darius's camp, including the king's family, his mother, wife, and children. Alexander would treat them with respect, but their capture was a powerful symbol of his triumph. In Darius's tent, Alexander found items of immense luxury: golden bathtubs, exotic perfumes, and priceless treasures. According to ancient sources, upon seeing these luxuries, Alexander remarked, "So this, it seems, is what it means to be a king." But the young Macedonian had little time for such comforts. He was already planning his next conquest. The Battle of Issus proved to be a turning point in Alexander's campaign. It opened the way to Phoenicia, Egypt, and eventually the heart of the Persian Empire. More than that, it demonstrated the superiority of Alexander's tactical genius over mere numbers and the importance of personal leadership in ancient warfare. The battle also revealed a crucial truth about empire, that magnificent armies and vast territories mean little without the will to defend them. Darius would meet Alexander again 2 years later at Gaugamela, where he would suffer a final defeat. But it was at Issus where the fate of the Persian Empire was truly sealed, where a young king from Macedon proved himself the master of the ancient world. The Battle of Issus would be immortalized in art and literature for millennia to come, serving as a testament to military genius and the power of bold leadership. Alexander's victory there would help forge his legend as Alexander the Great, the undefeated conqueror who built an empire stretching from Greece to India, forever changing the course of human history.